the questions that I was getting from people who were writing me letters, who were making phone calls to me, who were telling me about their own experiences. So there were a lot of things that I had to come to terms with, not just in terms of the topic, the legal topic of gender-based violence and the social problem of gender-based violence, but the book really is about my journey as well.
I love that you talk about your conversation with John Lewis's wife, Lillian, and how you consciously made the decision, do I take this on as a lifelong battle against gender violence, or do I try to go back to life as I knew it before, and really ask yourself, am I suited to be a civil rights leader?
Right. I had grown up during the civil rights era, and I didn't know Mrs. Lewis before the hearing. She and Congressman Lewis reached out to me after the hearing in a really warm and humane way. It wasn't a political effort to get me to do anything. It was just a way of reaching out to me as a person who had been deeply wounded by the process that unfolded in Washington. And when I talked to Mrs. Lewis, what she did was, first of all, talk with me about her own activism in civil rights in Atlanta, which I didn't know about. She was a librarian at Clark Atlanta University. She was an avid reader. She was very intellectual, but she also had an activist bent. So she shared that with me, and she also shared with me the idea of how important it was to have an African-American woman, a black woman, speaking to the issues that I was speaking to at the time when I visited with her at Spelman College about sexual harassment in the workplace, because I think the presumption had always been culturally that the experience was something that white women had, that women of color didn't have to deal with. There was this myth out there that we were never targeted, or that if we did, we responded in a way that stopped the behavior. And we know now that many African-American women were really at the forefront and filing sexual harassment suits back in the 70s. I didn't know it at the time, how much of the work that had already been done was done because of their lawsuits. And so when I put all that together, I had a choice to make. And you say it was a choice about a lifelong commitment. But in fact, when I made the choice, I thought it was going to be a 2-year commitment. And then, things, that's when things got complicated, I guess, at the end of 2 years. I think I was giving myself a trial because I wasn't comfortable. It wasn't that I didn't believe in civil rights or hadn't benefited from civil rights or didn't understand how important civil rights were to my own life. It was whether or not I fit the mold that I had grown up with as a child, watching the civil rights movement on television and hearing the speeches and seeing the leadership and realizing that much of the leadership, the upfront leadership, out front leadership was male, and that gender issues were, even on an intersectional basis, were not a part of the agenda that the leadership was presenting when I was growing up.
We're talking with Anita Hill. Her book is Believing, Our 30-Year Journey to End Gender Violence. It's not so bad. That's one of the quotes she shares in the book, something that's repeated over and over again. Why is that so destructive, and how do we change our mentality and end some of this harassment and discrimination and violence that continues to this day? We'll address those questions and more as we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
Thanks to our new sponsor, Lendistry. Lendistry is a national Black-led small business lender that is headquartered in Los Angeles. Lendistry helps small business owners access the affordable capital needed to grow. Visit Lendistry, LENDISTRY.com/KBLA today.
California is a great place to live and work, but those aren't easy things to do for students also going to college. That's why the state created the Californians for All College Corps, a way for students to build skills and help others while earning up to $10,000 for school. Commit to serve your community and we'll help you pay for college. Spots will fill up fast, so learn more and apply today at www.cacollegecorps.com. That's www.cacollegecorps.com. California is a great place to live and work, but those aren't easy things to do for students also going to college. That's why the state created the Californians for All College Corps, a way for students to build skills and help others while earning up to $10,000 for school. Commit to serve your community and we'll help you pay for college. Spots will fill up fast, so learn more and apply today at www.cacollegecorps.com. That's www.cacollegecorps.com.
Did you know Nissan EVs have traveled 8 billion miles? Just a quick trip to Pluto and back. And what did we learn along the way? Well, that an EV can take on the world, like the Nissan Leaf. It can move racing forward and take your breath away, like the all-new Nissan Ariya. We learned to make EVs that electrify. 8 billion miles driven by Leaf owners globally since 2010. 2023 Ariya has limited availability. All-wheel drive expected availability early 2023, subject to change.
Meet Joe A,
Hi.
Joe B,
Hello.
and Joe C.
What's up?
3 everyday Joes perfecting their banking with Chase. Joe A is locking his lost debit card with the Chase mobile app. Joe B is cruising toward his new ride with AutoSave. And Joe C's Chase banker is helping him budget to go back to school. Tools that help protect, support for what's next. One bank that puts you in control. Visit chase.com/checking. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Chase mobile app is available for select mobile devices. Messaging and data rates may apply. JP Morgan Chase Bank, N.A. member FDIC.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DiPrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
We're talking with Anita Hill. She is a lawyer, a legal scholar, an educator. She's written for New York Times, Newsweek, and is a sought-after speaker. And before we go any further, Professor Hill, I just have to say thank you. You are truly a hero. A shero. I mean, you have done so much for women, I know, and victims of gender violence who aren't women as well, but I know at a great price, a personal price. And I just thank you. I remember watching, the hearings as a young woman and rooting for you and feeling like the message that was sent to us was, no, we don't care. You're supposed to put up with this. It's not that bad. And to me, it was horrifying because having been in a workplace, like most women, according to the data, we've been through something like this, if not quite as disgusting as what you outlined. And yet you talk about in the book how Arlen Specter tried to embarrass you by asking you what was the most embarrassing thing that happened and then minimizing that and belittling you by making it seem that you were creating a big deal out of nothing, and how crushing that moment was, but yet, as the saying goes, you persisted.
Yeah, I think my ability to persist, to continue to assert that, in fact, I was harmed, comes from a lot of different places. But it comes from my teaching. It comes from my own personal experiences with discrimination. It also comes from a family. My family, I'm the youngest of 13 siblings. 3 of us went to integrated schools. The other 10 went to and graduated from segregated schools. My parents were born in 1911 and 1912. They had spent most of their life in segregation. And so this tendency to diminish our pain, whether it's racial discrimination or gender discrimination or abuse, was something that I knew, I was familiar with. I mean, how often have we told people who complain about discrimination, even today, about racial discrimination, that, you just have to toughen up and you've just got to put up with it because that's just the way things are, and you shouldn't even complain about it. And so when Clarence Spector took my experience of really some vulgar language and innuendo in the workplace that I was in as a 25-year-old, just really starting out in my career, when he took that and just tried to minimize it and to diminish me in the process, it wasn't something that was entirely unfamiliar to me. I had plenty to draw on, having grown up after Brown versus the Board of Education was decided, and still have experienced some discrimination that people told me, just to not complain about because nothing would change. And so but I also knew that when Spector spoke, he was trying to, again, not just my pain, but to belittle me for even raising it. And so I knew that if I was going to be heard at all, that I would have to resist that and continue and not doubt myself at the moment in that spotlight. And so that at that moment I wanted to continue. And then after the fact, when I put all of these things that had happened during my testimony together, I realized that it was a bigger issue, that it wasn't just about me, that what he was telling all victims is that this isn't worth our trouble.
Yeah.
You're doing this, and we don't care. So even if you have evidence, even if you have a statement, even if you experience the same thing, we're not going to do anything about it, and nobody should. And so it was a message to all victims, and it was a message to the rest of the country about how they should treat our pain and our experience. It was a message that these white male senators were better authorities on our lives and our feelings than we are. And that, the bottom line was that the odds were always against us because there will always be people like Clarence Spector who have the power to decide what happens to us. And so it was, I talk about it in the book, in part because I want the world to see that when we tell children, for example, that, that's not so bad. When we tell little girls, that the teasing that they get about their bodies, or the jokes that people make when they come into their bodies as women, and start to make that transition, that when you tell them, that's nothing, don't worry about it, or don't say anything, it's going to make you look bad. We're not, or even, say things like, if you didn't wear that shirt, or if you didn't wear that skirt, you wouldn't have this problem. And so I am that's part of what I'm writing about. How do we participate in the minimization of women and girls and their real experiences and their feelings, and are we not? And I know the answer to this question. Are we not grooming them to take even worse abuse as they get older? Aren't we giving them the message that nobody will care, nothing will be done? And aren't we giving those people who would be abusers that same message, that nothing is going to happen to you because no one cares about this problem that women and girls have? And as you mentioned earlier, increasingly we're aware that boys and men have as well.
Yeah. How are you brave? I mean, what makes you brave? I mean, you made the decision to testify before Congress at this time in history. You knew it wasn't going to be easy, and then afterwards you chose to go on a much more than 2-year mission to end gender violence. What makes you brave?
Well, I jokingly say yes. I said 2 years, and I do know how to count, and I know it's been longer than 2 years. And I feel in some ways like the book is a culmination of all of those 2 years, and also the fact that bravery is not something that happens in one instance. That bravery is something that you have to commit your life to once you make that commitment to address these issues. That you have to challenge people if you're going to have change. And I'm brave because maybe in part because I grew up in the civil rights era where people were being brave on television, and I saw that they were being injured, but I also felt how much they were helping me find myself. When women in the women's rights movement rejected notions that were sexist and about women's places, I saw that and saw it as bravery. I saw bravery in my own family. We grew up on a farm in Oklahoma, and there were still vestiges of segregation there. As I said, my sisters and brothers, older sisters and brothers, went to segregated schools. I had older brothers who were involved in the civil rights movement in Oklahoma, and also one brother who was very involved in bringing resources and materials and just about whatever was needed to support the movement in the South. He was driving back and forth because he had this great skill of being able to stay awake all night and drive. But he was engaged also in desegregating Tulsa. And I'll tell you one story that was told at my older brother Alfred's funeral from another individual who had worked with him. He was part of the Urban League and part of the efforts to desegregate Tulsa. So there was a bank in Tulsa. It was in the north part of town, which was primarily black, but it was really the biggest bank in that area, and it had all white employees. And so my brother and a colleague went to visit the bank president. They had a meeting with the bank president, and it was about jobs. It was about jobs for black people in this bank. And the president said to them, in this effort to sort of bully in his negotiations, said, well, how many jobs are we talking about? And I'm sure that the president was thinking, well, we'll just give a few people some menial jobs and that'll be it. And as the story goes, my brother looked at the president and said, we only need one job if it's yours. And so, that's bravery.
Yes.
I mean, that's really going there and saying, this is our demand. So I think when people think about, I think we need to when they have decisions to make, that requires courage, requires them to change, requires them to face challenges. I think it's good for us to think not only about the big examples that we have, but examples that we have in our own families, and among our own friends, about moments when they were brave, and draw on those, because I think those are the ones that really stick and convince you that whoever you are, that there is something in you that can tap into that moment and do what you need to do to move ahead.
Mm. Yeah, and what you're saying right now also just really reinforces that what we teach our daughters, what we teach our children, and what we pass on to the next generation is super important. We're going to go into some news and traffic right now. You talk about victim shaming. We see it again and again. We see it in modern times. How do we purge that that habit that from our consciousness? We have a frequent caller here named Molly Bell who said she asked me to apologize to you from all of the black women who chose Clarence Thomas because they felt you should have been choosing your blackness over your own safety or your womanhood. And at that time they felt they shamed you. We'll talk about that as we come forward. KBLA Talk 15.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Thank you for sharing a part of your Wednesday morning with us. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Federal authorities are launching an investigation into the Norfolk Southern Railroad following 3 accidents in Ohio. Besides last month's derailment in East Palestine and Saturday's derailment in Springfield, a Norfolk Southern train crashed into a dump truck in Cleveland Tuesday, killing the conductor. Disneyland is removing lyrics from the Zippity Doodah song in the medley in its Magic Happens parade. According to the Los Angeles Times, the song was removed and replaced in the set list with a song from the 1953 Peter Pan movie. Zippity Doodah is from the 1946 Song of the South film that has been criticized for black stereotypes and a rosy view of the South in its post-Civil War era. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Colombian singer-songwriter Maluma is bringing his magic to Yamava Resort and Casino at San Manuel. Buy your tickets today at YamavaTheater.com or the casino box office. Maluma, live at Yamava Theater on April 27th.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers beat Memphis last night by 9 and move into the play-in round. They are now the number 9 seed in the Western Conference. 30 points and 22 rebounds for Anthony Davis. The Lakers are 6-2 in their last 8 games. At halftime last night, the Lakers retired Pau Gasol's number 16 jersey. He's the 13th Laker to have his jersey hanging from the rafters. The Clippers are home tonight against Toronto. Tip-off at 7 on ESPN. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by Original Taco Pete.
Aaron at Original Taco Pete's. Come in today for our tasty seasoned black taco. We're at 3272 West Slauson, off Crenshaw, or call 323-348-4441.
KBLA Talk 1580 would like to thank all of the businesses that tune in to KBLA at work. We celebrate you, your calls to the station, and your overall support. To show our appreciation, we would like to treat your office to lunch for 10, sponsored by John O'Groats family-owned restaurant and johnogroats.us. Open the KBLA Talk 1580 app or log on to KBLA1580.com to submit your office to be selected for our Office of the Week. We know you're just like our staff, putting in many hard, smart working hours per week. We just want to say thank you, and we appreciate you. You and your staff deserve lunch on us. Enter your office to win lunch for 10 and be highlighted on KBLA Talk 1580 as our Office of the Week. Open the KBLA app or log on to KBLA1580.com to enter your office today to become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week. Sponsored by John O'Groats Family-Owned Restaurant and johnogroats.us. Become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week. This has been a KBLA Talk 1580 community call to action.
The Los Angeles Urban League and Parkside Economic Development Corporation are working to close the wealth gap between black and white households. B-Warp, the Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program's free virtual workshops will help your family acquire, gain, maintain, and pass down legacy wealth. Learn from the experts about making more with what you have, the Black history of money, joining the Smart Investors Club, preserving your assets in tough times, crypto, cash in or cash out, the wealthy mind and body. Register for this free series that could change your financial future at laul.org/BWAARP. Don't miss B-Warp, the Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program every second and fourth Thursday in February, March, and April at 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Register now at laul.org/BWAARP.
Hi, it's me, Gia Peppers. Tune in to More Than That live on radio this weekend or wherever you listen to podcasts. This week, I'm talking to our guests, Carmion Hamilton and Jewel Pearson, who share how DIY and tiny homes can allow us to reimagine where we live and the spaces we love. This episode of More Than That is brought to you by Kroger, making fresh food more accessible for our local communities.
It is 1,000% imperative that Black people enjoy the environments that they are in. We, as a people, have gone through enough over the last 400 years. The least we could do for ourselves is exist in a space that we feel good about being in. And I tell people, even if you don't see it together in the inspiration that you're looking for, the fact that you love these things, like, it may not go together for anybody else. It may not make sense to anybody else, but the fact that you love them, that is the thread. And so it will absolutely go together when it's pulled together in your space. It will make sense to you because it's your space.
I wanted to make decisions that were based on what does Jewel want to do versus how much money do I have in my bank account. And that's kind of when I pivoted and decided that I was building a tiny house on wheels and started the research, and here I am. I think I'd start with the very cliche, less is more, for one thing, and then build from there. Because I don't feel like I have given anything up in this process, and that I attribute to the design of my home. And I have all of the things in my home because before I actually built, I knew who I was and what I needed to have in this space. You don't have to give up luxury to go tiny.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
You got a big mouth. Hello, Joe, you're up. Welcome.
We're unapologetically progressive, and we don't black down.
We are talking with attorney and author Anita Hill. Her book, Believing, Our 30-Year Journey to End Gender Violence, released almost 30 years to the day after her explosive testimony during the confirmation hearings for Supreme Court Justice nominee at the time, Clarence Thomas. And I think the tease that I did before we went to news and traffic had a couple of questions contained in it. You talk in the book about how you get an outpouring of stories from victims and of gender violence, and how, grateful they are for you for speaking up, and I'm among them. But on the other hand, you faced a lot of ostracization and shaming. And as I said, one listener apologized for having done that to you at the time. How do we overcome this routine of victim shaming that we still see going on to this day with, the cases like R. Kelly and even the Kavanaugh hearings?
Yeah, that is a difficult problem, and it is one that really is impeding our progress on these issues. It's a particular problem, as I discuss it, among communities of color, and as you referenced early, the caller apologized, and I certainly accept that apology. I think I understand it better now. that people believed that they were choosing blackness, but they were ignoring my blackness, and they were ignoring the history of abuse of women, African American women in particular, and instead buying into the idea that Thomas spread that he was the one who was being victimized, and that I was causing his victimization. And as I think about it, it was a combination of racism and misogyny and sexism, I think, that led people to that conclusion that they had to choose this race over gender, as though I wasn't black at all. So, and that he represented the race instead of a woman being able to represent the race and to tell her experience. There was a poster that was taken out. It was actually started as an ad in the New York Times. A group of women wrote under the name of African American Women in Defense of Ourselves. And they talked about how the hearings were erasing the history of black women's experiences and how important it was for us to be heard within our communities, but in the public at large. And I think that's something that we are slowly understanding in our communities, because when it comes down to it, we as a community cannot be strong if 50% and more of our members are at high risk for gender-based violence. And that's what we're talking about now, taking a half of our population and simply saying that, you have to be quiet because it's in the best interest of our race or our community. And what we're ignoring is that we are the community. We are strength of the community.
No doubt. Looking back and looking forward at the same time, I think that that's the definition of Sankofa, Professor Hill. Then Senator Joe Biden was over those hearings, and a lot of people don't know that there were witnesses, corroborating witnesses, that he never brought forward. And some people are still angry with him to this day about that. You hold him accountable, I'll say, in the book, from what I can tell, but you don't seem bitter. I love that you gave advice about what should happen now as the Biden administration says that they are putting an equity lens on all government programs, that they need to go a little bit further. So talk to me about how you reflect back on that, and as he is now sitting in the White House, and also the advice that you gave to the Biden administration in your book.
Well, the question has been raised as what was the worst part of the hearing, and certainly my treatment was the worst part from a personal point of view, but the failure to call those witnesses was really, I think, one of the most harmful things that was done. It diminished those witnesses, the significance of what they were and what they had to say. It diminished their experience once again. And so I don't think we can really even estimate what might have happened had they been called. Certainly there probably would have been, fire at them as well. But I think it could have changed the minds of many people had those witnesses been called. And we see that often now, where we have to have multiple witnesses before any one witness is believed.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I move on? I can't undo that part of me that says, I want those witnesses to be heard. Their statement was read into the record at 2:30 in the morning. I want better treatment for them, for all people who come forward. But Joe Biden is now the President of the United States, and he is legally the President of the United States.
And you voted for him.
I voted for him.
Yeah.
Because I saw him as the best chance for a change. But the change is only going to come if we demand it. And so that is where I wanted to start, with making very clear that we couldn't undo 1991 in the sense of redoing it, but we could undo some of the damage if we can provide some kind of assurance that it will not be redone again in the same way. And more affirmatively, that we start to acknowledge the problems, dedicate ourselves to solutions, prioritize those solutions, bring in victims and survivors to be counsel and advisors on those solutions, and then make that commitment known and real through work throughout all of our cabinet agencies, because the problem affects us, whether it's in housing or labor or workplace issues and income levels, all of these, whether it's the criminal justice system or the civil justice system, where we meet basically procedures that fail us, all of these are implications, all of these are places inside the government that could be responding to this issue and should be responding to it. And I didn't even mention education. So that's what I would like to see President Biden take on now. An apology to me was something that he did, but where is the solution now that he's going to offer? That's what I want to know. I think he has a responsibility to act.
Agreed. We're talking with Anita Hill. The book is Believing, Our 30-Year Journey to End Gender Violence. As we come forward, I want her to expound on her thoughts on the woke generation. Yes, it's in the book. I'm Dominique DiPrima. This is First Things First for KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Black women get the job done. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News, brought to you by Lendistry. Story courtesy of CaliforniaBlackMedia.org. Representative Barbara Lee holds her first campaign rally at Laney College in Oakland, California, declaring, "We fight for freedom, dignity, justice, and together we win." Representative Lee said that that's why she's running for U.S. Senate. She is the highest-ranking African-American woman in the U.S. Congress and the only African-American so far in the 2024 California senatorial race. Lee, who is 76, is serving her 12th term in the U.S. Congress. I'm Maisha Kyle for KBLA 1580, and that's your K-Black Minute News.
Thanks to our new sponsor, Lendistry. Lendistry is a national Black-led small business lender that is headquartered in Los Angeles. Lendistry helps small business owners access the affordable capital needed to grow. Visit Lendistry, LENDISTRY.com/KBLA today.
All the symptoms, let's defeat it. Test and treat it. You can beat it. Test it to see what you've got. Is it COVID or is it not? Treat it. Ask for medication. Decrease risk of complications. Beat it. That's a 1, 2, 3 to stop COVID from multiplying. Isolate so you don't repeat it. Test it, treat it. You can beat it.
Yeah. Visit youcanbeatit.org or call 833-422-4255 to ask for medication to treat COVID-19. Sponsored by the California Department of Public Health.
Our weekly Los Angeles is the largest audited Black newspaper in the state of California, with a distribution of over 50,000 copies weekly. Pick up a copy every Thursday to get the latest news on African American communities of LA. You can also keep up with what's going on in Los Angeles and surrounding cities by going to www.ourweekly.com. The Our Weekly website is updated daily with the current news about us and for us. For your advertising needs, Our Weekly offers economical advertising packages to fit your budget. Feel free to call Our Weekly Los Angeles at 323-905-1300 or visit the website at www.ourweekly.com. Our Weekly Los Angeles, reporting news that matters to you.
We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for Progressive Talk Radio. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
And we're talking with Anita Hill, attorney, legal scholar, educator, and author. And in your book, Believing, Our 30-Year Journey to End Gender Violence, you talk about the myth of the woke generation. And not just this one, but other myths of other woke generations as well.
Yes, I mean, every generation lays claim to being the generation that's going to change attitudes and change the way things go in this country. And certainly things have changed over the course of my lifetime and beyond, even in my parents' lifetime, certainly. But this idea that by some natural evolution, that a generation is going to come along and do away with gender violence or racism or sexism or homophobia is just that. It is a myth. It's a tale that we tell ourselves to avoid our responsibility for being part of positive change. And it's time for us to wake up to that and realize that it's every generation's responsibility. And that, I'm a member of the baby boomer generation. I've had the pleasure of teaching just every generation that put people at risk. So, we all have to be active. We have to be anti-gender violence, not just say, we deplore it. We have to actively address it. And we have to make sure that our leaders in our organizations are doing the same. Where we have the power, when we do have the power, we need to exert it and not put all of the responsibility on victims and survivors to make this change.
That's such a great point. I mean, I just remember Dylan Roof was 21, and you think, oh, well, this plan of waiting for all the sexists or all the racists to die off is not working. So I love that you address that in the book, and yet you give a lot of credit for the work of the younger generations at the same time. We'll just have a few minutes left when we continue this conversation with Anita Hill, and I want to focus on solutions. What should we be doing as women, as activists, as change makers? What is your prescription for moving away from this gender violence, which is so pervasive in our society? It's KBLA Talk 1580.
A safe place to go loud. A great place for progressive politics. KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. I'm here with Lisa Stevens, Senior Business Consultant with Chase for Business. Lisa, what's one tip you'd give to business owners here in the Crenshaw area?
I love that you asked that question. I'm originally from Brooklyn, and I grew up in an area that's very similar to Crenshaw. So this is near and dear to my heart. And if I could only leave a business owner with just one, I would tell the business owner to identify their why. And I think that is so important because your why is going to be that strength on those days where you feel like you're struggling. Your why is going to be that stepping stone. Those days that you want to give up, your why is going to be the reason that you get back up.
And how would you advise business owners looking to acquire capital? What do they need to know before stepping inside the branch to ask for funding?
So 3 things. I do want to share this when it comes to the power of capital and just finding those resources. Understand that capital is a three-part of a business, right? It's not always about the monetary piece, but if you first put that intellectual, right, what do I need to know? That social, who I need to know, that will help you to then package for that monetary piece. So no matter who you're banking with, you should know your banker. Never walk into a bank and you're transactional only.
It's just like Lisa to drop gems. I'm Aisha Cairo in the community for KBLA with JP Morgan Chase.
KBLA Talk 1580 celebrates Women's History Month, sponsored by Walmart. As we celebrate Women's History Month this month, KBLA Talk 1580 would like to spotlight women leaders in our community who are creating positive change. If you or someone you know is making a difference in your community, please nominate them with a 50-word or less post on why you feel they should be included in the KBLA Women's Series, sponsored by Walmart. These women leaders will be featured on KBLA, interviewed on KBLA, and participate in a panel discussion hosted by Reva Martin in real time. Visit the KBLA app or log on to KBLA1580.com to nominate a woman in your community that is creating positive change. This has been a KBLA Talk 1580 community call to action.
Mom's early Alzheimer's diagnosis was hard to take.
And when I left the oven on, we decided together that it was time to see a doctor and make a plan.
Early detection gave us more time to seek out information and support as a family.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. For more information, visit alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 joins you in standing for education as a right, not a privilege. Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science is a private, non-profit, community-founded, student-centered university committed to cultivating diverse health profession leaders who are dedicated to social justice and health equity for underserved populations. CDU does this through outstanding education, clinical service, and community engagement. Recently, Charles Drew University made history by opening only the 5th medical school at an historically black university. Congratulations, South LA, and congratulations to the Dean of the medical school, Dr. Deborah Protho-Stith. CDU is now training doctors and providing $90 million in annual economic benefit to Watts and surrounding neighborhoods. To apply for medical school, get more information, or sign your child up for the Junior Doctors Saturday School program, visit cdrewu.edu. That's cdrewu.edu. At KBLA, we are dedicated to equity in education and ending healthcare apartheid, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Moments like hearing my cat purr good morning mean a lot to me. But after being diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, or MBC, which is breast cancer that is spread to other parts of the body, they mean even more. I take Ibrance, palbociclib. Ibrance 125 milligram tablets with an aromatase inhibitor is for adults with HR-positive, HER2-negative MBC as the first hormonal-based therapy. Ask your doctor about Ibrance and visit Ibrance.com. Ibrance may cause low white blood cell counts that may lead to serious infections. Ibrance may cause severe inflammation of the lungs. Both of these can lead to death. Tell your doctor right away if you have new or worsening symptoms, including trouble breathing, shortness of breath, cough, or chest pain. Before taking Ibrance, tell your doctor if you have fever, chills, or other signs of infection, liver or kidney problems, are or plan to become pregnant, or are breastfeeding. Common side effects include low red blood cell and low platelet counts, infections, tiredness, nausea, sore mouth, abnormalities in liver blood tests, diarrhea, hair thinning or loss, vomiting, rash, and loss of appetite.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
Attorney Anita Hill, it's been such a pleasure talking with you this morning. And I just want to ask you, as we have just a few minutes left, what would you have us focus on as far as solutions, as far as changing this paradigm, changing our behavior, being the generation or the last few generations to really make a difference here?
Well, you can start by, if you're a parent or a grandparent, talking to principals, teachers, superintendents. Make this issue a school issue for your children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews who are experiencing at high rates in the school system. And we can just begin by, making sure that kids are not punished for coming forward, because I have heard tons of those stories as well, that kids are dismissed or punished when they do come forward and complain about a problem. That's one place where you can not only, address the issue with our generation, but also with on behalf of the generations to come. We need to, as activists, make this a part of the political discussion. It's not an issue that has been raised, but it belongs right in all of the questioning that we give to candidates who we plan to elect for higher office. And I say that because this issue has implicated our courts with the Senate Judiciary Committees. It's implicated our military with the scandals there. It's implicated our governors' offices in some states, take New York. It's implicated all of Washington, D.C. practically.
Yeah, you say 3 of the last 5 presidents. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yes. So this is a political issue that needs to be discussed in every major election. And so those are things that we need to begin to demand of the people who are decision makers. And we need to understand that they have the power to make change. And if they're not changing the policies, if they're not changing the systems and the structures, that nothing will change in the future.
Anita,
and we'll pass this on to a new generation.
Right, and they'll also claim to be the woke generation and be faced with the same issues. Anita Hill, thank you so much for spending the hour with us. The book, Believing, Our 30-Year Journey to End Gender Violence, is out now.
Thank you for having me, Ms. DiPrima.
As we get ready to pass the microphone to Tavis Smiley, I always leave us with a quote. Today I will quote my godmother, the poet and feminist Audre Lorde. She says, "Your silence will not protect you." As I mentioned, we have a full day of programming ahead. Tavis Smiley with a lineup of great interviews. After that, it's Middays with Danny Morrison and Miles Lowe, too. And the programming continues all day long. You're always welcome to call in to participate. And don't forget, we have an incredible lineup now of brand new weekend shows. I'm Dominique DiPrima. History is now, and we are making it together. Until tomorrow, be safe, be well, one love.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thank you for sharing a part of your Wednesday morning with us. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Federal authorities are launching an investigation into the Norfolk Southern Railroad following 3 accidents in Ohio. Besides last month's derailment in East Palestine and Saturday's derailment in Springfield, a Norfolk Southern train crashed into a dump truck in Cleveland Tuesday, killing the conductor. Disneyland is removing lyrics from the Zippity Doodah song in the medley in its Magic Happens parade. According to the Los Angeles Times, the song was removed and replaced in the set list with a song from the 1950